Hello, it's me, Christine. Welcome to my little crime corner. Imagine you've just walked into work. You're the only one there. It's quiet, it's morning. What is the absolute last thing you expect to see? You really hope it's nothing out of the ordinary. One morning in September, at the Newport Harbor Yacht Club, a yacht club employee saw a bedsheet covering what he thought was a body. Newport Beach, California is one of the wealthiest communities in America. Newport Beach, for the most part, has an extremely low crime rate. Hardly any violent crime, and if anything, there are minor property crimes here and there. So, a discovery like this, as you can imagine, shook the community. When investigators arrived to the harbor, they saw an adult female with multiple stab wounds all over her body. In total, there were more than 52 stab wounds and abrasions to her face, neck, back, and torso. When she was pulled from the water, there were still weapons inside her body, including a knife through her eye. This was just awful and clearly done by someone who hated this woman. Among the bloody bedsheets, there was also a small fold-up pocket knife found, and it is unclear if this was intentionally placed there in order to get rid of it, or accidentally got caught up in the folds of the bedsheet. I'm more inclined to believe it was wrapped up and left on purpose, since the person responsible for this most likely thought she would never be found, so they tried to get rid of all of the evidence, including the murder weapons. Because of how long the body was in the water, it was difficult to determine exactly when she was placed in the water, as you know what prolonged periods of exposure do to the skin. Over time, skin loses elasticity, pigment, and overall integrity, as well as being in different states of preservation based on how cold or how warm water temperatures reach. And you would have to consider the fact that the water temperatures could have fluctuated overnight. What made things even more difficult was that there was no identification on or around the body. This would have certainly slowed down the investigation. While conducting the autopsy, the medical examiner had discovered that the victim had breast implants. As you know, all implants are medical equipment, and all pieces of medical equipment have a serial number. They were hopeful that by running the serial number on the implants, this would reveal this woman's identity. Sure enough, they found that they had belonged to a 56-year-old woman named Barbra Mullenix. She had had the surgery done several years prior in Oklahoma and was now living in Huntington Beach, California, with her 17-year-old daughter Rachel and her ex-husband Bruce. Although divorced, Barbara and Bruce were on good terms. When Barbara and Rachel had moved to California, they had moved in with Bruce and were living as roommates until Barbara was able to get back on her feet and get a place of her own. This worked out for them, as their daughter Rachel only had one more year left of high school, so she had the support of both of her parents, and both of them got to enjoy their time with each other before Rachel was to go off to college the following year. I know this type of situation doesn't work for everybody, but it seemed to work for them, and for the most part, seemed like the best case scenario for everybody involved. Although they got along later, their divorce was a bitter and dual effort. Bruce said they frequently fought and that Barbara's drinking was a heavy contributor. Apparently, her drinking caused her to be very moody and her personality changes made her a very difficult person to talk to and to be around. They were luckily able to reconcile for Rachel, even if it was just temporary. While looking at the area around where Barbra was found in the water, investigators did find a piece of a cardboard box floating nearby, later determined to be part of a TV box. Although they didn't really have proof of this, they thought that it might have something to do with Barbra, like it might have been used to carry her body through the yacht club. They knew that it couldn't have been there long, since the yacht club proprietors keep the area as clean as possible, being connected to the ocean and all. Eventually, it would have drifted out to sea. So, they retrieved the cardboard piece from the water for testing, hoping to get something of use off of it. While examining the box, investigators found labels on the box indicating that it had come from Bruce Mullenix's condo and that the murder might have actually occurred there. According to the shipping label, the TV had been bought by Bruce a few days earlier at a local electronics store in Huntington Beach. When police went to interview him, he was not at his home. This was really concerning to police because Rachel wasn't there either. The next day, while visiting the condo again and examining the area, Bruce showed up and appeared to be confused and perplexed as to why the police were there. The lead investigator told Bruce what had happened, why they were there, and that Bruce was their primary suspect. Again, Bruce met this information with shock. Based on the medical examiner's findings, he had estimated that Barbra was killed and left in the water sometime late Tuesday night or very early Wednesday morning. Bruce had said that he left his home very early on Tuesday morning for a business trip and was over 250 miles away from Huntington Beach in Fresno at the time. That is convenient. There were no obvious signs of forced entry into the condo, but that could just mean that a door or window was left open, or that Barbra, Bruce, or Rachel had let in someone that they knew. One odd thing that investigators had found was missing was Barbra's mattress. This is a very conspicuous thing to be found missing, and something that neighbors would have definitely noticed if they saw someone heaving a very heavy mattress late Tuesday night or early Tuesday morning. When police reached out to Bruce's neighbors, the person living right next door said that at about 2 o'clock in the morning, they were woken up by yelling and a loud thump. He said that it persisted for about 30 to 45 minutes, and he would not have been surprised if someone had been murdered there. He had no idea that Barbra had been murdered there when he made that statement to police. Unbelievable. Barbra's room was sprayed all over with luminol, and boy oh boy did that room light up. Based on the blood evidence found, it was clear that someone had suffered a major injury and had bled out a lot. There was so much blood found all over the room that whoever it had come from likely did not survive. Based on the smears, they also found that someone had gone through a lot of trouble to clean up the room. Although not nearly enough trouble because whoever was cleaning up missed a bloody yellow sponge that was left on the nightstand. Several pieces of the wall from Barbra's bedroom were removed, and the latent print examiner had found a full palm print, but when compared to Bruce's palm print, did not match. Upon a search of the rest of the condo, A box of rubber gloves was found on the kitchen counter, and when investigators opened the cutlery drawer, they were startled to find silverware matching the knife that was found in Barbra's eye. Barbra was definitely attacked and killed in this condo. Remember, all the while this is going on, with police searching the condo and Bruce being eliminated as a suspect, Rachel is still missing. When called, her cell phone goes directly to voicemail. Nobody knows where she is, and Bruce and police are panicking. She was last seen a day before Barbra's murder at a movie theater with her boyfriend Ian Allen. Ian was 21 and didn't always get along with Barbra and Bruce. Barbra really wasn't a big fan of Ian for several reasons. One of them being he was 21 and her daughter, who was still a minor, had fallen in love with him and would often talk about the two of them getting married. Barbra saw this as losing her daughter, who was all she had, and didn't want to be alone. It is the parents' job to raise their children, but they need to let them lead their own lives. Rachel was still, however, a minor and still legally bound to her parents, so this was a heavy point of conflict between them. When Barbra had found out that the two of them were frequently having overnights together, she had threatened Ian with a statutory rape charge. A few days later, I guess everyone had a chance to cool off. Rachel was somehow able to convince her parents to sign a written statement that said, "To whom it may concern, I give my daughter Rachel Mullenix my full permission to date Ian Allen." Both Barbra and Bruce signed this. Bruce later went on to say that they thought this was the best way to maintain a good relationship with their daughter, who I guess they thought might run off with Ian, and by signing this statement and promising not to pursue the statutory rape charge again, they felt that if the two of them were around more, they would be able to keep a better eye on them. This did work for them for a time, but just 1 week before Barbra's murder, Rachel had missed her 1 a.m. curfew, and Barbra had driven over to Ian's house and made a huge scene. She banged really hard on the front door and yelled and woke up everybody in the house. Rachel was furious and embarrassed and huffed and puffed her way into Barbra's car. When they got home, Rachel was grounded. Barbra had then forbade her from seeing Ian again. Beyond angry at this point, Rachel had no intention of ending her relationship with Ian. She was going to date him even harder now. This was really tearing Barbra and Rachel's relationship apart, and it was already only hanging by a thread. Police had found out that 2 years earlier, while in Tampa, Florida, Rachel had attacked Barbra with a knife, slashing her arm in several places. Barbra refused to press charges on her then 15-year-old daughter. Bruce went on to say that some of the fights they got into really hit below the belt, and Barbra would often call Rachel really terrible names and say really horrible things to her, things that a mother should never say to their daughter. He recalled her being very drunk when they got in these types of fights. Because of the several public altercations between Barbra and Rachel and Barbra and Ian, and the fact that no one had seen or heard from Rachel since the day before the murder, police were eager to speak with Ian. He, unfortunately, was missing too. Of course. When police turned up at Ian's parents' house, they said that he wasn't there and they hadn't seen him in several days. Ian's parents did, however, offer police some valuable information. They said that the .38 caliber pistol that belonged to the family was missing. With no obvious signs of Ian, his parents did allow police to search their home. Since Ian was living at home, they were hoping that this would at least give them a clue as to where Ian and Rachel might be or where they're going. When searching the family's computer, they had discovered that someone had looked up directions from Huntington Beach, California to Tampa, Florida on the day of Barbra's murder. Could this be where Ian and Rachel are? This had become a nationwide search at this point, and investigators were monitoring his phone pings, credit card usage, and potential truck sightings. They finally got a hit. Ian had used a debit card to make a withdrawal at an ATM in Sulphur, Louisiana, which was about 12 and a half hours away from Tampa. Once police had gotten news of his location, they immediately arrived at the Louisiana convenience store and arrested Ian and Rachel. Once at the police station, Rachel and Ian were separated and interrogated. Rachel said that Ian had kidnapped her against her will and that he had killed her mother Barbara and that she had nothing to do with it. During a tearful display, she said she had been woken up in the middle of the night to her mother screaming, and when she ran to her room, she saw Ian standing over Barbara and he was stabbing her. She said that when she had tried to push him off Barbara, Ian pushed her away and knocked her out. She said she had woken up several hours later in a hotel room, not knowing what was going on. She was adamant that she was kidnapped and had nothing to do with her mother's death or dumping her body at the yacht club. Meanwhile, while Ian was being interrogated, he confessed to killing Barbara and said that he had acted alone and that Rachel had nothing to do with it. He said that he had only gone there to scare Barbara and that it quickly escalated and got out of control, leading him to stabbing and killing her. Rachel was still very tearful in the next room, going on and on about how she was innocent and Ian was responsible for everything. Police then confronted her with the fact that her DNA had been found on that bloody yellow sponge that was left on Barbara's nightstand, proof that she was at least involved with the cleanup. Rachel's fingerprints were also found on a roll of duct tape, which was found in Ian's truck, which matched the tape found on the cardboard box they recovered from the yacht club. Both Ian and Rachel's DNA were found on Ian's .38 caliber pistol. Investigators begged the question, if Rachel had access to this gun and had come in contact with it, why didn't she use it to get away from Ian if she was kidnapped? All this DNA evidence proves that Rachel and Ian both had a part in murdering Barbara. Text messages between Rachel and Ian also provided a timeline of events that night. Rachel had said that she had gone to bed at around 10 p.m. that night and only woke up to the sounds of Ian attacking Barbara. However, her texts show that she was texting Ian up until 1:45 a.m., describing Barbara's movements and final moments. It is believed that this murder had been strategically planned around Bruce being out of town at the time on his scheduled business trip. Rachel and Ian had texted back and forth several times while waiting for Barbara to go to sleep. When she had, she called Ian up. There was no forced entry because Rachel had let Ian in. Once inside, Ian went to the kitchen and took out several knives from the cutlery drawer and made his way upstairs to Barbara's bedroom. Police believe that both Rachel and Ian were involved in the murder, as the medical examiner had determined that Barbara's injuries were consistent with having been inflicted by more than one person. Rachel and Ian had stabbed Barbara over 52 times. While Rachel and Ian had attempted to clean up, Rachel had used the yellow sponge, leaving her DNA behind, and Ian had placed his hand on the wall to steady himself, leaving behind his full palm print. Barbara's mattress was so bloody, they had to get rid of it. It is believed that they attempted to burn it to get rid of any evidence, and the wire frame was dumped on some railroad tracks very close to Ian's workplace. They then wrapped Barbara up in a bedsheet and put her body in the cardboard box. They sealed it with the duct tape from Ian's truck, which carried Rachel's fingerprints. They drove to the yacht club, where they threw the box into the water, hoping that it would float out to the ocean, never to be seen again. During the trial, Rachel had testified in her own defense that she had no part in killing her mother and that she was a victim too. Rachel said, "I don't care what the jury thought. I did not do this to my mother. I can't even believe this is happening to me." She also described Barbara as my world and my life. She said that, "Even though I didn't do it, I feel like I didn't do enough to prevent it." The prosecution thought that she was just trying to elicit pity and that she was a cold-hearted individual that had manipulated her boyfriend of only 3 months into taking part in her mother's murder. The jury did not believe her, and Rachel Mullenix was convicted of murdering her mother and sentenced to 25 years in prison. During a separate trial, Ian Allen was also convicted of the murder of Barbara Mullenix and sentenced to 25 years in prison as well. After Ian's trial, he told police that Rachel was involved from the very beginning and was a willing participant in the planning, murder, and cover-up. Police, of course, already knew this. Thank you, Ian. Rachel's father, Bruce, said at the trial that Barbara was an abusive alcoholic and had refused to believe that his daughter was a killer. He said, "I know in my heart she didn't do this. Her mother had problems. No one knew how bad it was other than Rachel and myself." Although no friends of Barbara had appeared in court to speak on her behalf, a law clerk from the DA's office did read a prepared statement from an anonymous friend of Barbara who described Rachel as a narcissist with a black heart who disposed of her mother like a piece of garbage. I did find an interview from Barbara's other son, who is Rachel's half-brother named Alex, who thinks of Rachel more as a victim than a perpetrator. He said that the press tried to portray her as this horrible person when she wasn't, and that their mother definitely had a different side to her. He said that when they would bring their friends around, she would be super nice, and all their friends would think that she was a cool mom. The minute that they leave, she would be a different person. Alex said that there was always a lot of drugs and alcohol around, and that Barbara would frequently party with Rachel and Ian. He said that she would take uppers and downers to keep up with this lifestyle. When Rachel had expressed that she wanted to leave, Barbara felt her world crashing down. She didn't want to be alone and knew she couldn't get by with alimony and child support, even though she was living with Bruce at the time. Alex had also said that he had a hard time believing that Rachel had allegedly attacked Barbara with a knife in 2005. He said that when he was living with her in 2003, she had several self-inflicted wounds and that she'd threatened to say that he did it. Coincidentally, this happened at a time when he was about to leave home too. Not knowing that this had happened to her too, Rachel had told Alex about the same behavior. He explained that Barbara was very controlling and wanted to be the center of attention. He didn't feel as though this was a healthy trait when you are a mother. He felt that she was emotionally and mentally abusive to himself and Rachel, as she would frequently call their jobs and bosses to intentionally try to start problems and embarrass them. Alex then describes an instance where he just couldn't take it anymore and had to get away. He left for Oregon because he thought Barbara wouldn't be able to find him there. She actually found him there 2 weeks later and had made several calls to his boss. He says of the murder, "I'm shocked that it happened, but then I'm not. You can't go around treating people like that and think nothing will happen. At any time, anything can spin out of control." He does not believe that Rachel planned the murder, but that she did participate in it. He heavily blames Ian and believes he potentially had a third person. Rachel Mullenix was released from prison on October 14th, 2022, and is with her father Bruce in Southern California. Just wow. There really are many sides to the story, and it's just a lot to think about. Let me know what you think. Do you think it was all Rachel's idea, or just something that she got caught up in, or something in the middle? Let me know. Well, that is all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.